Did you know that nicotine is the primary agent in regular cigarettes and e-cigarettes, and it is highly addictive? Welcome to Fact Check channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Vaping, it's basically the practice of inhaling and exhaling vapor, containing nicotine and flavoring, produced by a device designed for the purpose. A vape device contains three main parts: a heating element, atomizer, a power source, usually a battery, and a mouthpiece that the person uses to inhale. But how do these components work, to be specific? 1. The battery and charging circuitry. Vaping device uses a heating element to boil a liquid, turning it into vapor that you can inhale. For that to happen, the device needs power, and it gets that power from one or more lithium-ion batteries. The battery in your vaping device is responsible for sending power to the atomizer coil to vaporize the e-liquid. In addition, your device also has battery management circuitry that's responsible for charging the cells and ensuring that their voltage is never allowed to go too high or low. What you may not realize is that a dual battery vaping device stores about the same amount of power as a notebook computer. While a computer can run on battery power all day, though, a vaping device actually spends most of its time idle. You'll get somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 puffs out of a dual battery device before it's time to recharge it, and at an average length of about 3 seconds per puff. That means you're only getting a few minutes of active use out of your vaping device between battery charges. 2. The tank and atomizer coil. While the main body of your vaping device is responsible for managing and delivering power, the tank and atomizer coil are responsible for managing your e-liquid supply. A vape tank is actually a pretty ingenious invention because it has multiple holes for air to enter at the bottom and a hole for vapor to exit at the top, and yet, it can somehow hold several milliliters of e-liquid without leaking. A vape tank prevents leaking by using several silicone gaskets to prevent the e-liquid from coming out. The tank also maintains an internal vacuum that helps to prevent the e-liquid from seeping out through the atomizer coil. The atomizer coil in a vape tank has a densely packed cotton wick that keeps e-liquid in close contact with the coil's heating surface and manages the flow of liquid throughout the tank. Here's how it works. When you press the fire button on your vaping device, the heating surface in the atomizer coil vaporizes the e-liquid held in the wick. The wick is dry when you finish your puff, so it absorbs more e-liquid from the tank. The level of e-liquid in the tank decreases slightly. When the tank begins to get low, you add more e-liquid. The cycle continues until you open the tank to replace the atomizer coil. 3. The e-liquid. There are two main liquids of vape. 1. E-liquids with a VG bias tend to produce larger vapor clouds with little to no throat hit. 2. E-liquids with a PG bias provide the hit to the back of the throat that is often favored by those trying to give up smoking. These liquids tend to produce a more subtle amount of vapor. These liquids contain 5 main ingredients: propylene glycol, PG, vegetable glycerin, VG, nicotine, flavorings, water. But how do the e-liquids actually work? When talking about how a vape works, the last component that makes your vaping device work is the e-liquid. Vape juice generally contains nicotine, which is obviously the point of vaping for most people. Vaping replaces the nicotine that you would get from smoking. Since you absorb the nicotine via inhalation, vaping is as satisfying as smoking. That's what has enabled so many vapers to stop using tobacco products. E-liquid also contains flavors, which helps to reinforce the enjoyment you derive from vaping. Objectively, e-liquid is dramatically tastier than cigarette smoke, and that helps to make quitting easier. Nicotine and flavors are both highly concentrated substances in their original forms, so an e-liquid also needs a carrier to dilute those substances and create a usable product. In most e-liquids, the carrier is a blend of propylene glycol, PG, and vegetable glycerin, VG. In a typical bottle of e-liquid, around 90 to 95% of the content is the carrier, not the nicotine and flavors. The carrier creates the clouds that you see when you vape. Adjusting the ratio of the two carrier liquids can dramatically change the performance of the e-liquid. That's why a bottle of e-liquid usually has its VG/PG ratio printed on the label. Vaping devices can be broken down into 4 categories. 1. Cigalikes, first generation. 2. Vape pens, second generation. 3. Mods, third generation. 4. Pod mods. But why are vapes popular, and why do many prefer them? Most of the vapors like the fact that the e-liquids come in different nicotine concentrations, giving vapors the flexibility to manage their cravings and eventually withdrawing themselves off the addictive chemical. However, there are others who see vaping as the ideal thing to do when relaxing and chilling, an alternative hobby, best alternative to smoking, and cost-saving, compared to smoking. But is vaping much better than smoking? Many studies show that vaping is far less harmful than smoking. This is because e-cigarettes don't contain cancer-causing tobacco, and most of the toxic chemicals found in cigarettes are not in e-cigarettes. Facts you need to know. With vaping. If you have thought about trying to kick a smoking habit, you're not alone. Nearly 7 of 10 smokers say they want to stop. Quitting smoking is one of the best things you can do for your health. Smoking harms nearly every organ in your body, including your heart. Nearly 1/3 of deaths from heart disease are the result of smoking and secondhand smoke. You might be tempted to turn to electronic cigarettes, e-cigarettes, vape pens, and other non-disposable and disposable vaping devices, as a way to ease the transition from traditional cigarettes to not smoking at all. But is smoking e-cigarettes, also called vaping, better for you than using tobacco products? 1. Vaping is less harmful than smoking, but it's still not safe. E-cigarettes heat nicotine, extracted from tobacco, flavorings and other chemicals to create an aerosol that you inhale. Regular tobacco cigarettes contain 7,000 chemicals, many of which are toxic. While we don't know exactly what chemicals are in e-cigarettes, however, it has been proved that vaping exposes you to fewer toxic chemicals than smoking traditional cigarettes. 2. Research suggests vaping is bad for your heart and lungs. Nicotine is the primary agent in regular cigarettes and e-cigarettes, and it is highly addictive. It causes you to crave a smoke and suffer withdrawal symptoms if you ignore the craving. Nicotine is a toxic substance. It raises your blood pressure and spikes your adrenaline, which increases your heart rate and the likelihood of having a heart attack. 3. Electronic cigarettes are just as addictive as traditional ones. Both e-cigarettes and regular cigarettes contain nicotine, which research suggests may be as addictive as heroin and cocaine. What's worse, says Blaha, many e-cigarette users get even more nicotine than they would from a combustible tobacco product. Users can buy extra-strength cartridges, which have a higher concentration of nicotine, or increase the e-cigarette's voltage to get a greater hit of the substance. 4. Electronic cigarettes aren't the best smoking cessation tool. Although they've been promoted as an aid to help you quit smoking, e-cigarettes have not received Food and Drug Administration approval as smoking cessation devices. A recent study found that most people who intended to use e-cigarettes to kick the nicotine habit ended up continuing to use traditional and e-cigarettes. 5. A new generation is getting hooked on nicotine. Among youth, e-cigarettes, especially the disposable kind, are more popular than any traditional tobacco product. According to the 2021 National Youth Tobacco Survey, more than 2 million U.S. middle and high school students reported using e-cigarettes in 2021, with more than 8 in 10 of those youth using flavored e-cigarettes. According to research, there are 3 reasons e-cigarettes may be particularly enticing to young people. First, many teens believe vaping is less harmful than smoking. Second, e-cigarettes have a lower per-use cost than traditional cigarettes. Finally, youths and adults find the lack of smoke appealing. With no smell, e-cigarettes reduce some of the stigma of smoking. What is vaping versus smoking? The difference between smoking and vaping is that smoking delivers nicotine by burning tobacco, which can cause smoking-related illnesses, and vaping can deliver nicotine by heating a liquid in a much less harmful way. How does vaping affect your body? E-cigarettes produce a number of dangerous chemicals including acetaldehyde, acrolein, and formaldehyde. These aldehydes can cause lung disease, as well as cardiovascular, heart, disease. E-cigarettes also contain acrolein, a herbicide primarily used to kill weeds. What are the side effects of vaping? Coughing, dry mouth and throat, shortness of breath, mouth and throat irritation followed by headaches. What are the long-term effects of vaping? These risks include nicotine addiction, mood disorders, and permanent lowering of impulse control. Nicotine also changes the way synapses are formed, which can harm the parts of the brain that control attention and learning. Want to quit smoking? There's a strong link between smoking and cardiovascular disease, and between smoking and cancer. But the sooner you quit, the quicker your body can rebound and repair itself. Talk to your doctor about which smoking cessation program or tools would be best for you.